Uh, Good morning, our dear viewers. Welcome to Homeschool. I am your teacher today, Mr. Solomon, and wherever you are, we welcome you for this show. Please get comfortable, get a pen, get a book, and make sure you have invited everyone in the house. I am going to be teaching you biology today, A-level, and if you're in A-level taking biology, I advise you to continue reading even as we go through this. I'd also want to give a vote of thanks to the people who make this possible, our beloved Pastor Jackson Senyonga and Pastor Evelyn Senyonga. Thank you for giving our students an opportunity to continue teaching, to continue learning even while we are going through this pandemic. I advise everyone there to stay home and stay safe. Thank you. So today, we are going to be looking at a very crucial topic in A-level biology called behavior. And for this segment, we are going to be finding out why animals behave the way they do, why some animals do the things they do. And we expect that by the end of this, we are going to achieve what most psychologists call a change in behavior. So, what is behavior? The first question maybe we shall ask is, what is behavior? So, producer, if you will put for me my first slide. What is behavior? Producer, please put for me my first slide. The second one. Yes, in the Oxford Dictionary, as we wait for the producer, behavior are all those things, the things that people do in reaction to different things. And as they do these things, they do them as a result of the things they experience. So if we go to the next slide, there are things that I want us to do without failing. To the next slide. If we go to the next slide. Yes, these are the things that I want us to make sure we do. Every one of us should have a pen and a notebook. Make sure you log into our website. It's www.codehighschool.sc.ug. Make sure you go in there. We have a lot of information. We have work that is going to be very beneficial to you. We have very many things on that website that are going to benefit you. We have this, actually, even this work is there. The work from the previous lessons is there. Go in, sign up, get an account. It is free of charge. Don't be afraid of money. It is free of charge. So make sure you go to that website, www.codehighschool.sc.ug. Make sure you go there and make sure you get an account to access all this work. Make sure as you stay home as a biology student, make sure you are able to read. Make sure you are able to continuously improve yourself, and make sure you are able to keep reading, because sooner or later this pandemic is going to be done and you must be able to be answering the exams very soon. And also don't forget, remember to invite a person. Remember to invite a person for this broadcast. It is always on. It's from 6 to 8. So very quickly, what do we expect to get from this lesson? So Mr. Producer, if you give me the next slide. What do we expect? What are possible learning outcomes? The first learning outcome is what I had started with. We are going to define what behavior is. We are going to find out what does behavior mean. What does this term behavior mean? The second learning outcome for this segment today is we are going to find out the rationale of behavior. Rationale simply means the importance of behavior. Why is behavior important? Why should animals, why should organisms have behavior? And the third rationale for this segment today, we are going to look at different types of behavior. Particularly for this segment, we shall be handling two types of behavior. That is innate behavior and learned behavior. We are going to find out what these two terms mean and what we use them, what we refer to, what we mean when we say innate behavior and learned behavior. So if you will go with me very quickly to the introduction. Mr. Producer, give me the next slide. Yes, behavior. In biology, unlike the Oxford Dictionary, we define behavior as an internally directed system of adaptive activities that facilitate survival and reproduction. In other words, all this English, we are simply meaning one thing. All the things organisms do to be able to survive and reproduce. So, in simple terms, behavior is all to survive, and that's underlying meaning. It's very, very important to understand that these are the things organisms do to be able to survive and also to reproduce. The underlying factor of survival for all organisms is two things. We have survival and reproduction. You need to be able to stay alive and you need to be able to reproduce. So as an organism, you have to align your life around these two purposes of living. The first one is survival and the second one is reproduction. You need to be able to stay alive, and after staying alive, you need to be able to reproduce. In the wild, if you are unable to survive, if you die, or if you are unable to produce offspring, you have lost. So the underlying factor of behavior, why animals behave the way they do, why a lion will chase after a deer, why cheetahs do or hunt, or why antelopes run, is one thing: the need to survive and reproduce. In biology, the study of behavior is what we call ethology. Please make sure you're noting a few things down. That is why we are presenting these slides to you. The study of behavior is ethology. And many scientists have studied these things. If you look up, we have very many of them. I'll mention two for this segment because they are one of the two most pronounced. We have Ivan Pavlov and B.F. Skinner. Very important personalities for the study of behavior. We have very many types of behavior. We can see from our PowerPoint here, we have two snails in the middle there. What they are doing is courtship. We have two chimpanzees on the side, two baboons on the side. What they are doing is grooming. We have bees in the corner right there, flying. All those types, all those are kinds of behavior. So there are very many behaviors. There are very many things organisms do to be able to survive. And it is a factor, it is a key factor in the survival of organisms. You need to behave a certain way if you're going to be able to reproduce and to survive in the wild. So let us very quickly look at why behavior is important. If we go to the next slide, why is behavior important? Why do organisms need behavior? There are four major reasons, four major importances of behavior. The first one, the first rationale for behavior is to find food. The first rationale for behavior is to find food. Organisms need different behaviors to be able to find food. We have seen, for example, as we can see in our slide there, we have a cheetah hunting after an antelope. Yes, if a cheetah is unable to behave a certain way, if a cheetah, which is a predator, is unable to behave as a predator, it will be unable to find food. Therefore, organisms need to behave in particular ways to be able to acquire food. Organisms need to behave in certain ways to be able to get food. Organisms need to do certain things to be able to find food. So there are certain behaviors that are prerequisite for an organism to find food. Yes, so why do we need behavior? The first importance of behavior is to get food. So my dear viewers, when you look at animals doing the things they do, when you look at a mouse, and when you see it running around in the house, it's not because it is having fun. No, organisms behave in particular ways to be able to achieve particular points. The second importance of behavior is interaction. Interaction. For organisms that don't stay alone, for example, we have organisms that are social, like bees. We have organisms like the warthogs. We have organisms like elephants. We have organisms that stay in packs. wolves, foxes. These organisms need to interact with each other. They need to stay intact with each other. They need to do things together. And because they need to do this, they need to behave a particular way. For example, when we look at the hierarchy of bees, we have the queen bee, we have the worker bee, we have all these different types of bees, and all of them do particular things. Because they do those particular things, they are able to survive and interact with each other successfully. If you cannot behave a certain way, you will not be able to stay with everyone. Even we can see this in our daily life. There are things we need to do as people who stay in a home so that everyone at home is uninconvenienced. So behavior helps organisms to be able to interact with each other. The third and very importance of behavior is the ability to be able to find mates. We need behavior to be able to find mates. Let me give you an example. If you are observant, you have noticed that during the mating period of dogs can sometimes come in the community. You will notice very many dogs will be in the community in the breeding season. This is a behavior that dogs have during their mating season. It is like they are going through courtship, so that and at the end of the day they are going to climax and have they are going to consummate it with sex and have children. But they behave a certain way towards mating that is going to enable the women to choose the best mates. Different organisms. A good example in human beings is before you marry, you don't just marry anyone. Yes, our parents can attest to this. They went through a process of courtship, and they chose particular characters for the husband, for the mate, for the husbands or wives they wanted. That right there is the behavior that they were looking at. They looked at whether a person was clean, whether a person was smart, whether a person had money. These different behaviors don't only exist in human beings, they also exist in animals. Animals do different things to be able to attain. A good example is the blue jay. In the blue jay, which is a bird, you can write it down and probably look it up. This bird here, when it's doing courtship, it builds a nest, and when it builds the nest, it gathers very many plastic things around the nest. So when time comes, the female blue jay is going to come, and basing on the plastics around, it is going to choose which mate to take. It is quite funny, but that is how they do it. That's their behavior. So the question probably would be, why plastics? Why do they collect plastics? But it has been noticed that these birds look at probably which bird has the best feathers, which bird has the best colors. In the peacocks, for example, they look at which bird has the best color, which bird is the biggest. All these behaviors are important for organisms to find mates. And if you studied evolution, you know that it is important, it is very, very important to have the best variations passed on from generation to generation. So therefore, behavior is important for finding mates. The last and most important of this is to escape predators. It's the very most important. Remember, we said the behavior is important for us to be able to survive and reproduce. If you cannot be alive, you cannot reproduce. Therefore, survival is primary to reproduction. Yes? If you cannot survive, if you are not alive, you will not be able to reproduce. So we need behavior. We need different sets of behavior to be able to reproduce. So those are the four importances of behavior. So if they ask you, why do organisms need behavior? You just need to tell them four things. We need behavior to be able to find food. We need behavior to be able to stay with each other, to interact with each other, to find mates, and to escape predators. So if we go to the next slide, behavior is dependent on the stimuli in the environment. Yes? If you're studying with me, you need prerequisite knowledge of coordination. And we studied in coordination about a term called stimuli. Yes? A stimuli is an event that evokes a specific function or reaction. A stimuli is an event or something that evokes a reaction. If you stepped on a pin right now, you would jump up in pain. That pin is the stimuli. Yes? So when you jump up in pain, it's the reaction. Now, behavior is dependent on different stimuli. Behavior is dependent on different stimuli. You need to behave. You don't just wake up in the morning and say, today I am going to do this. No, there is stimuli that drives different behavior. There is different stimuli that drives different behavior. There are two kinds of stimuli that I want to talk about in this segment. The first one is internal stimuli. Internal stimuli are those things that are inside our bodies that drive a reaction. The things that come out from within us that cause us to do things without. The first example is hunger. Towards one, for most of my students, it is usually lunchtime. And you realize that the behavior, the way they behave towards lunchtime is unlike the way they behave after lunchtime. Why? Because during that period, most of them are hungry. Yes? So what does this tell me? That the body has a mechanism of informing my students that they need food. The body has a mechanism of informing you, my viewer, that you need food, and that mechanism is hunger. In that sense, therefore, hunger becomes a stimuli. And what is the importance of hunger as a stimuli? It informs you of the need for food. So after you are informed that you need food, the behavior would therefore be that you would find food. Yes? The second internal stimuli we have is pain. Pain, in most cases, warns us about injury on our body. If you touched a hot object, if you touched a frying pan, for example, if you touched a kettle when you are lifting it from fire probably, and you touched the hot part, you would quickly let go. Why? Because the stimuli, which is pain inside your body, is telling you that you are injuring your skin. Yes? And in that wise, therefore, pain becomes a stimuli. But it is not coming from without. You don't feel pain from outside in. You feel pain from your body, and it tells you to do something without. Therefore, pain becomes an internal stimuli. Another common example is thirst. If you have walked a long distance before without taking water, you have sweated, it is hot, it's blazing hot, you realize after some time that you feel thirsty. You just know you feel thirsty, but you can't, someone may not see you outward and say this person is thirsty, but for you in your body, you know that you are thirsty. And what does this tell us? That if your body loses a certain amount of water, there is a mechanism that should inform you, there's a mechanism in place for you to know that there's a decrease in your internal fluids. And therefore the stimuli in that case becomes thirst. So we have very many internal stimuli, but all these stimuli are going to give us one thing in common, and that thing is going to be an accumulated behavior that we shall see in an organism, when we look at an organism, the things that people do, the things different people do, sometimes are from a result of internal stimuli. Away from that, we have external stimuli. Light. If you studied coordination in plants, we looked at the effect of light, the phototropic responses. We looked at photoperiodism. All these different things are examples to show that light is a stimuli in plants. But it is wrong to think that light only affects plants. It's wrong to think that, because light is also a stimuli to animals. Animals also need light to do certain things. There are things that are dependent on light. We see in our third example there that the change in day length can trigger reproductive behaviors. There are organisms that entirely depend on light to be able to do certain things. There are organisms that are awake at night. We have the owls. We have organisms that move during day. We have organisms that depend on light probably to find mates. There are organisms that work during night. Like, for example, the owl hunts at night. The bat hunts at night. Yeah, and most of these cases, light is going to become a very important stimuli. Without light, they will be unable to do some things, and some things cannot be done in the presence of light. Therefore, light is going to be a stimuli that affects the wholesome behavior of different organisms. Yes, let me give you a time to probably process that and write that. The second stimuli we talk about is sound. Sound. Right now you are able to hear me and you are able to write what I'm saying. Therefore, what I am emitting is sound. And how do I know that sound is a stimuli? In most cases, if you, my dear viewer, if you look at the things that you do, the way you have been brought up, it has been because of sound. Your mom told you, do this, don't do this, go there, don't go there. And as a result, there are places you can't go to, there are places you can't go to. This is not very different from what happens in the wild. When you go to the forest, for those of you that have probably visited Mabira Forest, different forests, you know, you have been told by your guides that different sounds mean different things. If you hear the roar of a lion, you cannot stay in that place, because you know I should be getting out of this place right now. Because you know when lions roar, it can only mean someone is going to be eaten. Yes? But there are sounds that you hear in the forest and they tell you that's a pigeon, probably that's a bird, that's an eagle. It should not worry you. Yes, likewise, these different sounds in animals mean different things. Different sounds imply different things. They have different implications. In the wild, animals depend on sound. They depend on what an organism, on what sound they hear to respond a certain way. A good example is if you are if you've been careful before, there are sometimes when you hear a lion roar, if you've probably watched movies, a lion will roar and birds will fly away. Why? Because this sound tells the birds that whatever is coming is dangerous. So organisms have built their behavior around that. They have built their behavior around that alarm, that when I hear this sound, if you had a bullet right now, you would not get out of your house. Why? Because the bullet has developed a behavior in you that bullets kill people. So every time you hear something that sounds like a bullet, you associate it with death. You don't move near there. You don't go near there. If you hear people screaming, people shouting, you just know there is trouble there. I should not definitely go there. Exactly. So that is how sound becomes a stimuli. Yes? So if we go to the next slide, I want us quickly to look at the types of behavior. The types of behavior. So if we go to the next slide right there, my producer. Types of behavior. Yes, we have three types of behavior. We have very many types of behavior, but in this particular segment, I want us to handle two major types of behavior. We have innate behavior. Innate behavior. We have learned behavior. We have complex behavior. We have very many more. We have territorial behavior, agonistic behavior, we have reproductive behavior. We are going to look at all these things. But what do these three mean? Innate behavior, yes? As you can see from our slide, innate behavior are natural, inborn patterns of behavior, things that organisms do naturally. There are things that no one taught you how to do, yes? Then we have learned behavior, behavior that we acquire through experience. Right now, I am teaching you, and my hope is that after this segment, you will be able to change, you will be able to do some things because of the things you've heard me speak. That is learned behavior. There are things we do because we have either seen our parents do them, we have either tried them and they failed, so we do them differently. There are things that we do because we saw our parents do it, we saw someone on TV doing it, and that's a problem for our generation. There are very many things we do because we have seen celebrities do them. All that is what is termed under learned behavior. And then complex behavior is a blend of both. We have complex behaviors that we cannot really attribute to be learned and we cannot really attribute to be innate. A good example is walking. All of us are supposed to be able to walk, but not all of us walk the same exact way. Yeah, there are some people who walk bouncing, there are people who walk straight, there are people who walk very differently. Yes, and this becomes a complex behavior because we know that it is innate. We know that we are supposed to walk according to our genes, but we also know that people walk differently. Yes? So very soon, very quickly, let us look at innate behavior in a little bit of detail. Innate behavior, if you will go with me to the next slide. Innate behavior, yes. Innate behavior, like I said earlier, these are natural inborn behavior. This is a natural inborn behavior that is determined by your genetics. Yes? There are things that you do, there are things that you are able to do because of your genetics. There are things you are able to do because of your parents. There are things you are able to do because you are a human being. That is innate behavior. There are things you are able to do because you are a human being. A good example is a baby. You can see in that picture there. If you placed a finger in a baby's mouth, that baby would suck on that finger. Not because it is the mother's breast, no, but because it is an instinct for the baby to suck on whatever comes into their mouth. It is innate in them. They don't learn. No one teaches a baby to suck on the mom's breast, no. The moment they are born with the ability to suck on their mom's breast. The other good example is babies crying. You don't teach a baby to cry when they come into the world. No, they just cry. The moment they come into the world, it is inborn for them to cry. You can't blame a baby for crying when they are born. The moment they get into the world, they just cry. You don't explain to the baby, now you are in a new place, this place is difficult. No, the moment a baby is born, they will cry. A good example in the animal kingdom is the spider. Spiders are solitary organisms that don't stay with others. Spiders are solitary organisms that don't stay with they don't stay with their parents. You can't find that this is a family of spiders staying here. No, they stay alone. But you will realize that all spiders are able to make webs. They are all able to build their homes. They are able to build their webs by default. No one teaches the young spider to build a web. It is able to build that web by default. Whether it has been taught, whether a parent is there or not, all spiders are able to build. So that building of webs is an innate behavior. It is something that is natural for them. It is something they don't struggle to do. It's not something that is inborn in their system. Just like you are able to see with your eyes, you are able to breathe, you can hear me, you can probably, you can open your mouth. When you eat food, you swallow it naturally. No one is teaching you how to do any of these things. These are what we call innate behaviors. Yes? Now, you cannot wake up and say, I want to become better at breathing. Why? Because innate behaviors cannot be improved. Yes? Innate behaviors cannot be improved. Everyone has to do it in the exact same way. They are stereotyped. Every time you wake up in the morning, the only way you will see is by opening your eyes. Every time a baby will be given a breast, they will suckle on it. And all babies will do the exact same thing. Why? Because suckling is an innate behavior. So if you've been wondering why people do some things exactly the same, it could be that some of those things are innate behaviors. That an innate behavior is done the same way for all members of the species family. If you're from the same species, all Homo sapiens will do some things the exact same way. All fish will swim. All fish. You don't teach a fish to swim. The moment it is a fish, it should be able to swim. The moment it is a fish, it should be able to swim. Those are things that they are going to do all the same way. So let us look at the characteristics of innate behavior. The first one is that they are inborn. You are born with them, like I've been emphasizing. You are not taught innate behaviors. You are born with these things. The other one is that they are heritable. They are heritable. I said earlier that these behaviors are born a part and partial of your genetics. They are part of what you have in your genotype. Therefore, if your mother did it, you will do it, and your children will also do it. But that also puts a point of caution. It means that if a mutation, if you've studied genetics, if a mutation was to happen, there's a possibility for these behaviors to change. Why? Because they are determined by the genotype. The other one is that they are stereotyped. Stereotype means that all organisms in that group will always do it the exact same way. All dolphins swim the same exact way. All fish swim the exact way. A good example is penguins. All penguins move the same exact way. If you've watched probably the penguins of Madagascar, all penguins move the same exact way. If you've watched a documentary, penguins, it might not be comfortable, it might look easy, but all organisms in that species group will do it the same exact way. All organisms in that species group will do it the same exact way. Yes, the other one is it is inflexible. Inflexible. Inflexible means you cannot change it. You cannot change how you behave if it is an innate behavior. Yes, you cannot make it better. They are inflexible behaviors. You cannot modify them. You cannot modify how to swallow food. It is an innate behavior. You cannot change how you hear. You will always hear with your ears. Yes? And finally, it is consummate. They are consummate. And this is quite important. The moment a behavior is inborn, an organism is born fully able to do it. The moment a behavior is innate, an organism is born able to completely do it. So if we go back to our slides, some of the advantages of innate behavior. Some of the advantages of innate behavior. The first one is they enable rapid response. They enable rapid response. A good example is the earthworms. Earthworms, by default, if they hear vibration on the ground, will go back into their holes. They will quickly go back into their holes. It's something they do without thinking. They don't think about, I think that's not a human being. No. It helps them because it makes them able to respond quickly. Another good example of rapid response is if you touch a hot object. If you touch a hot object, you will quickly withdraw your hand. By default, you quickly withdraw your hand. Why? Because it is an innate response. It is an innate response. We looked at it earlier in coordination. Another example, another importance is that these behaviors are perfect for organisms that have short lifespans. Yeah, they are perfect for species which do not live for long. Organisms that don't stay long need these innate behaviors. If you are a spider, for example, you need to know certain things from birth. You need to be able to build the web from birth. You need to be able to make a web from birth. So they are important for organisms that live for long. And finally, innate behaviors are also important for organisms that don't show parental care. If you have children that you don't take care of, they need to be able to know things by birth. They need to be able to do some things by birth because otherwise you will be unable to survive. I want you to remember where we started from. Behavior is important for survival and reproduction. If you are unable to find a mate, yes, if you are unable to find a mate and yet your parents are not there, you will be unable to reproduce. If you are unable to escape from predators by default and you don't have parents, you will be unable to reproduce and survive. Yes, so we have seen some of those examples there. We have suckling in babies, we have making waves by spiders, and egg rolling in the grey-lag goose. In the grey-lag goose, it's a very unique example. When, for example, it is hatching its eggs and an egg rolls out of the nest, you can see from our PowerPoint there that if an egg rolls out, yes, it is going to reach out for it and roll it back in a certain way. But it can only roll it, it will do that every time an egg moves out. Every time an egg moves out, it will roll it back, every time. And it doesn't need to be taught how to do this. It simply knows how to do it. So let us look at the different categories of innate behavior. Yes, if you go with me to the different categories of innate behavior. Yes, we have 4 categories of innate behavior. The first one is the reflex actions. These ones are common. We have looked at them in our previous topic, coordination. Reflex actions, these are simple automatic responses. If you touch a hot object, you will remove your hand. It's that simple. If you step on a pin, you will jump up and away. It is a simple reflex. You simply do it. You don't think about it. If someone was quickly touching your eye, the eye would quickly blink. You would quickly close your eyes. You don't think about it. You just do it. So those are the reflex actions. Then we have orientation behaviors. Orientation behaviors are coordinated movements. Right now, I am moving my hands, I'm moving my legs, I'm moving my body. When I came here, I came walking. You walk. Those behaviors, your mom didn't teach you down and say, my son, my daughter, this is how we walk as human beings. No, you woke up one day, you crawled, you leaped on things, and then eventually you are walking. These are orientation behaviors. In different organisms, we have flying, we have swimming, we have these different things. No one teaches organisms in a species group to do these behaviors. They just do them. Yes. Another category there is kinesis, non-directional orientation behavior. Yes. Where the rate of movement is directly proportional to the intensity of the stimulus. In other words, an organism is going to behave a certain way because of a certain stimulus. And if that stimulus is increased, even the movement is going to be increased. A good example we have there in the middle picture is the woodlice. Yes? If you look at the woodlice, it says that in the dry area, they move very fast and randomly. They move very fast in a random manner. Yes? But when you put them in a moist area, woodlice are going to move very slowly and they are going to move in a more regular pattern. Now, what does that tell us? That the stimulus, which is dryness or moisture, is going to increase the behavior, which is moving randomly. But if you bring moisture, it's going to cause a behavior which is moving slowly and in a regular pattern. And finally, taxes. We have looked at taxes earlier in coordination in plants. And this is a locomotory response to a given stimulus. We have here in our picture, we have butterflies around a bulb. Butterflies are positively phototaxic. They move towards light. You have probably seen a moth or a butterfly around your bulbs before. Why? Because butterflies move towards light. On the other extreme, we have maggots. Maggots move away from light. If you placed them in a container having one side light and one side dark, you would notice that they would move from the lighter area to the darker area. Yes? And this is a behavior that they have. They don't think about it. They are just negative phototaxic. They move away from light. Yes? So very quickly, we have one more category to go, and those are the fixed action patterns. If you will go to the next slide, the fixed action patterns. The fixed action patterns. Okay, thank you. The fixed action patterns. Now, fixed action patterns are behaviors that are triggered by a very specific stimulus. They are triggered by very intricate, specific stimulus. Not every stimulus can do it. Yes? But one thing is peculiar about them, that once they are initiated, they continue until they are completed. Yes? A good example in human beings is yawning. If you start yawning, you cannot stop in the middle and say, I'm stopping to yawn. You have to yawn until you're done. It has to be carried out to the end. Another example there we have in the picture is the toad, the frog or the toad reaching out for the insect. Yes? As it reaches out for that insect, it is something it has to do to the end. It does it until it gets the insect and then the tongue comes back. It can't throw out the tongue and then say, no, come back. It is something that an organism will do. It carries it out. Once it starts, it has to continue until it is completed. Okay, now, I have mentioned earlier that they are initiated by a very specific stimulus known as the key stimulus. But if this stimulus is an organism, it is called a releaser. Yes? If this key stimulus is an organism, it is called a releaser. Now, let me give you a good example. We all know that toads eat insects, right? They reach out, grab them, and they swallow them. But did you know that a toad can starve and die of hunger if you provided it with only dead insects? If you gave the toad a dead insect, for example, it would see them, but it would not eat them. Why? Because the stimulus is supposed to be movement of an insect. When it says the insect should be moving. Yes? The insect should be moving. A good example there is the duck rolling an egg. When an egg moves out of the nest, the duck must roll it, and it rolls it until it gets it back into the nest. It cannot stop in the middle and say, I'm tired. No, it keeps on rolling it back, rolls it, until it gets back into the nest. Okay? Very quickly, we have two examples there of fixed action patterns. If you go into the next slide, we have examples there of fixed action patterns. Yes, we have that bird you're seeing there is the robin. That bird is the robin. You can see it has a red chest. As you can see, it has a red chest. It has a red chest, and this chest here is important in its territorial behavior. If this robin exposes its chest, the birds around know that this territory has someone occupying it. Yes? The birds around know that this territory has someone occupying it. But this behavior can also be, this response can also be elicited if we get a simple, probably picture, maybe a doll or a model, and then we also stuff it with red feathers. The birds will also know that this is a territory marked by someone. What does that tell us? That the behavior of the birds looking at this is not initiated by a bird in itself. No, but rather it is initiated by the redness of the feathers of the chest. That is what fixed action patterns are. That when you look at them, they are triggered by a very specific stimulus. They are triggered by a very intricate specific stimulus. In this case, the stimulus is the red feathers of the male robin. Yes? Another example there is the three-spined stickleback. During the breeding season, the fish on the side you see are the spined stickleback. Yes? But during the red season, the female stickleback follows a red-bellied male. Yes? If you Google this, you will see different experiments, different tests people have done. And I adjure you that take time to look up some of these things that they teach you in class. In this period, make it a priority to know, to become better at your subject in actual sense. Go and find out real information, look at pictures, watch videos about this. So I was saying, in the breeding season, the three-spined stickleback follows a red-bellied male. Yes? In a nest that was built by the male, you can see there, it is following the male, and then when it reaches there, the male touches the tail of the female, and the female begins laying eggs. But it has been observed that this fish will also follow any model of a red-billed stickleback. In other words, if I present it with probably chalk, but chalk is shaded red down, it is going to follow chalk into the nest, and the same thing will happen. What does it tell us? That actually, in the breeding season, it is not the male fish that is the stimulus. No, it is the red belly of the fish that is the stimulus. Those are fixed action patterns. They follow a specific stimulus. So this fish is going to follow this model without thinking about it. It was born to do that. It simply follows a male that has a red belly, and when it touches the tail, it will begin releasing its eggs. Okay, so I think that's quite enough for innate behavior. Let us quickly look at a few concepts in learned behavior. Learned behavior, if you go into the next slide. Learned behavior. Yes, learned behavior, these are things that we do as organisms. These are things that we do as organisms that cause a change in our behavior. Sorry, these are behaviors that come as a result of different experiences. There are things that you do as a person, yes, and I want you to think about this. There are things that you are not born knowing them. Yes, you are not born knowing them, but you do them over time from experience. A good example right there, a good example is writing. Yes, none of us were born knowing how to write, but currently I can write on the blackboard. Yes, but there are people out there even right now, if you gave them a piece of chalk to write on the blackboard, they would be unable to write on the blackboard. Why? Because they have not learned how to write on the blackboard. What are the advantages of learned behavior? The first one is that it's flexible. It's flexible. Yes, different people write differently. Different people write on the blackboard differently. You have noticed that the handwritings of your friends is not similar to your handwriting. It's flexible. You can do it in a different way. Yes, it is important for organisms that have long lifespans, like human beings. If you are going to stay around for 93 years, like human beings, which is quite a long time, you need to learn some things. You need to be able to learn that if you touch fire, it burns you. Yes? So there are behaviors that we have learned over time that enable us to survive and reproduce better. Yes? For example, our grandparents knew that if you marry from a family that probably has a certain disease, your children are most likely going to have that disease. So they had it as a behavior that they would not marry from certain families. They would marry from particular families. That was a behavior that they learned over time. If you are going to have children that are going to be better, going to be healthier, you need to be able to make wise choices. This in itself is what we call a learned behavior. Therefore, behaviors that are learned are important for organisms that have long lifespans. Yes? It is also important for organisms that have parental care. A good example is the baboon. If you are staying in the forest, for example, you need to be able to teach your children that there are animals that are dangerous, because children will always be children. There are things they won't know. Yes? There are things that they need as parents. They need you to teach them as parents. Yes? Another example there, it is important for organisms that stay with other members of a species, organisms that stay in packs, like wolves, lions. Yes, organisms that stay in packs need to learn some things. For example, you need to be able to tell that this territory was taken by someone else, so that you don't interfere with it. Yeah, let us look at the differences between learned behavior and innate behavior. As we wind up, let us look at some differences between learned behavior and innate behavior. Learned behavior and innate behavior. The first one, please, if you present my slide, the first one is that innate behaviors are heritable. I said it earlier. Innate behaviors are heritable. You inherit them from your parents. Innate behaviors are heritable, and learned behaviors are non-heritable. You cannot inherit how to write. You cannot inherit how to write. But you can inherit how probably to suckle if you're a baby. You can inherit how to make webs if you're a spider. But you cannot inherit how to jump if you're a human being. You have to learn. The other example, another difference there is that innate behaviors are intrinsic. They are driven from within out. Blinking, making webs, swimming in fish. It is intrinsic. But learned behaviors are more extrinsic. They are driven with an outward expression. Yes? Innate behaviors are stereotyped. Stereotyped. What does that mean? It means that all organisms in a species group will do it the same exact way. All organisms will do it exactly the same way. However, learned behaviors are permutable. It means different organisms do them differently. Different organisms will do them differently. Yes? They are inflexible, innate behaviors. You cannot change them. That's how it is. You cannot change it. You can't say, me, I'm going to do this like this. I'm going to breathe like this. No. You cannot say, I am going to breathe like this. You cannot stop yourself from breathing. It's inflexible. You have to breathe probably until you die. Yes? Learned behaviors are adaptable. They are adaptable. If you realize that for me to go from here to here, I have to jump faster, you can adapt. You can become better at doing that. You can become better at lifting weights. You can become better at writing. You can become better at reading. Those are learned behaviors. Consummate. Innate behaviors are consummate. Means once an organism is born, it is born able to do it. You don't negotiate it. You don't think about it. Yes, while learned behaviors are progressive. Progressive means you once knew how to walk, you once knew how to write, but you didn't write very well. But as time goes on, you become better and better and better at writing. Yeah? You become better and better at doing certain things. For example, swimming. Human beings are not naturally swimmers, but you can become better at swimming. You can become better at doing these things. You can become better at playing football. It is a learned behavior. Also, innate behaviors are they are unintelligent. They are unintelligent. You don't need wisdom to breathe. You don't need to be wise to see. You just do it because it's part of what your nature is. You just do it because it is inborn. Yes, also, learned behaviors, on the other hand, are intelligent. There are people who can't swim. There are people who can't carry weights. They have not learned how to do that. Yes? So I want you to think about some of these types of behaviors. We shall start from here. If we go to the next slide, I want you to go thinking about some of these things. I want you to think about these 5 types of behavior. We shall start from here next time. Let's think about habituation. What does it mean? Go find out what is habituation. What is associative learning? What is associative learning? What is latent learning? What is insight learning? What is imprinting? Yes? Go out there and find out what some of these things. We are going to go into depth discussing what these things mean. And don't forget, if you take me back to the second slide, there's something I want to emphasize. Don't forget to log onto our website. Yes, www.codehighschool.ac.ug. Don't forget, go there. All this work is there and much more. We are putting this work so that you stay home and you stay safe. Make sure you go on to this website. Just get data, log in, find out work